Commander Kim Tae-ho pressed his palm against the cool metal of the observation window, feeling the slight vibration that ran through Lunar Base's structure. The alien fleet stretched across space like a dark infection, their massive ships blotting out entire star patterns. 12,000 vessels of war, each one carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. "Commander, the size readings are off the charts," whispered Sergeant Kang Do-hyun, his voice barely steady. "Their flagship alone is 30 kilometers long. Our entire Pacific fleet could fit inside its cargo bay." Kim nodded slowly, watching the Valtharian dreadnoughts position themselves in perfect formation. These weren't raiders or pirates. This was the full military might of an empire that had been conquering worlds since before human civilization had discovered fire. The reptilian species had turned warfare into an art form, their three-eyed faces becoming the last sight countless species ever saw. Behind him, the command center buzzed with controlled tension. Lieutenant Park Min-ah's fingers flew across her communication array, intercepting alien transmissions and running them through quantum translation protocols. The sounds coming through her speakers were harsh, guttural, like gravel being ground in a steel drum. "Sir, I'm picking up their tactical chatter," she reported, her young face pale but determined. "They're discussing landing zones, Tokyo, New York, London, Seoul. They want to hit population centers first." General Lee Hyun-woo stepped forward, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 73, he had seen humanity's darkest hours and brightest victories. His dark eyes held secrets that went back decades, to projects so classified that even most world leaders didn't know they existed. "How long since first contact?" Lee asked quietly. 6 hours, 14 minutes. "Sir," replied Captain Yu Sung-min from the tactical station, "Global Defense Council is in emergency session, but the alien ships have been jamming most communications." The massive Valtharian ships moved with predatory grace, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that shimmered like soap bubbles in the starlight. Each vessel bristled with weapon ports and launch bays. Kim could see smaller craft swarming around the larger ships like angry insects, their pilots probably eager for the slaughter to begin. "They're beautiful in a terrifying way," murmured Dr. Shin Yun-ji, the xenobiology specialist who had been studying the intercepted alien transmissions. "Perfect killing machines designed for one purpose." A new sound filled the command center as warning klaxons began to wail across Lunar Base. Red lights bathed everything in an ominous glow, and Kim felt his heart rate spike despite his training. "Incoming transmission on all frequencies," Park announced, her voice tight with nervous energy. "It's the alien fleet commander." Kim straightened his uniform and nodded. "Put it through to the main screen." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a face that belonged in humanity's worst nightmares. Fleet Admiral Vextar was massive even by Valtharian standards, his scaled hide bearing the ritual scars of countless battles. 3 golden eyes studied the human command crew with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up prey. His mouth was filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Pathetic creatures of the dirt world." Vextar's words were perfectly translated by the AI systems, though his tone carried pure contempt. "I am Fleet Admiral Vextar, of the Eternal Valtharian Empire. Your species has been selected for conquest and subjugation." Behind the alien commander, Kim could see the bridge of the massive flagship. Hundreds of Valtharian officers worked at glowing consoles, their movements efficient and deadly. Holographic displays showed Earth's major cities, marked with targeting. Reticules that made Kim's blood run cold. "We have conquered 43 worlds across the spiral arm," Vextar continued, his 3 eyes never blinking. "Civilizations far more advanced than your primitive society have knelt before our might. Some resisted. They no longer exist." The transmission showed brief flashes of devastated worlds, cities reduced to radioactive glass, entire species wiped from existence. The Valtharian Empire didn't just conquer, they erased any trace of resistance from the galaxy. "You will surrender all military assets immediately," the alien admiral declared. "Your leaders will present themselves for processing within 1 rotation of your planet. Any resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your world." As the transmission ended, silence fell over the command center like a heavy blanket. The junior officers looked terrified, their faces reflecting the hopelessness that any sane person would feel when confronted with such overwhelming force. But Kim noticed something interesting. General Lee's expression hadn't changed at all. Neither had the faces of the senior staff. They looked like people who had been expecting this moment for a very long time. "Well," Lee said calmly, breaking the silence, "I suppose it's time to show them what happens when you wake a sleeping dragon." Admiral Song Ji-hee's fingers moved like a pianist, performing a deadly symphony across the holographic controls floating before her. The command bunker, buried 3 kilometers beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula, hummed with barely contained energy. Screens showed the countdown timer that had been ticking away for the past 37 minutes since the Valtharian ultimatum expired. "Ma'am, their dropships are breaking through the upper atmosphere," Captain Yoon Da-un reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "I count over 2,000 assault craft heading for major population centers." Song watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy vessels streaked toward Earth's surface like deadly meteors. Each dropship carried 500 Valtharian shock troopers, genetically enhanced killing machines that had crushed the defenses of dozens of worlds. Their reptilian forms were encased in powered armor that could shrug off tank rounds, and their weapons could slice through reinforced steel like butter. "They're following standard Valtharian invasion protocol," observed Major Han Seok-jin from his position at the tactical station. "Hit the capitals first, decapitate leadership, then spread outward. It's worked for them for 3,000 years." The alien craft descended in perfect formation, their hulls glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction. Energy shields rippled around each vessel like liquid light, deflecting the desperate missile attacks that various Earth militaries were launching in futile gestures of defiance. The Valtharians had faced such primitive resistance countless times before. "Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow, London, Washington," Lieutenant Park Young-ho read off the target list. "They want to hit 12 major cities simultaneously. Classic shock and awe tactics." Song's dark eyes remained fixed on the central display, watching as the enemy dropships grew larger and more menacing with each passing second. Around the command bunker, hundreds of technicians and officers worked at stations that looked deceptively simple, almost primitive compared to the sleek alien technology bearing down on them. "Admiral, we're receiving panicked transmissions from world leaders," reported Communications Officer Choi Min-seo. "The President of the United States is asking for immediate evacuation. The European Union is requesting emergency shelter protocols." A thin smile played across Song's lips. "Tell them to stay calm and trust in humanity's true strength." On the screens, the first wave of Valtharian dropships was now visible to the naked eye from Earth's surface. Citizens in major cities looked up at the growing specks of light with a mixture of terror and fascination. News broadcasts showed people fleeing in panic, while others simply stood and watched, as if hypnotized by the approaching doom. 30 seconds to impact," announced Major Han, his fingers hovering over controls that looked nothing like the advanced weapons systems they actually controlled. All Silent Thunder stations report full readiness. Across the globe, installations that had been hiding in plain sight for decades began to reveal their true purpose. The weather monitoring station in Antarctica started drawing power that could light entire continents. Communication towers in the Australian outback began focusing energy that made fusion reactors look like birthday candles. Wind farms in the North Sea transformed into massive collectors that pulled energy from dimensions most humans couldn't even comprehend. "The aliens are probably laughing at us right now," muttered Sergeant Kim Hyun-jin from his monitoring station. "They think we're just primitive mammals cowering in fear." Song's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Let them laugh. Pride comes before the fall, and the Valtharians are about to learn why humanity survived when the dinosaurs didn't." The first Valtharian dropship screamed through the clouds above New York City, its massive bulk casting shadows over skyscrapers as thousands of panicked humans fled through the streets below. Similar scenes played out across the globe as alien craft prepared to disgorge their deadly cargo onto an apparently defenseless world. 10 seconds to impact," Han announced. "All stations locked on target." Song raised her hand, her expression as calm as if she were ordering tea instead of unleashing humanity's most closely guarded secrets. The weight of 5,000 years of human evolution, creativity, and stubborn refusal to surrender rested in her decision. "This is Admiral Song Ji-hai to all Silent Thunder stations worldwide," she spoke into her communicator, her voice carrying across encrypted channels to installations on every continent. "Humanity has been patient long enough. We've watched the galaxy burn while we prepared. Today we show them what happens when you threaten our home." The alien dropships were now seconds away from landing, their hulls glowing white-hot as they prepared to deploy troops that had never known defeat. Valtharian warriors inside those ships were probably already savoring their expected victory, planning how they would divide up Earth's resources and population. "Operation Silent Thunder is authorized," Song declared, her words echoing through command centers from the Arctic to Antarctica. "Show these invaders what sleeping giants do when they finally wake up." Instantly, the planet Earth transformed from a seemingly defenseless world into something that made the Valtharian sensors scream warnings that came far too late to matter. Dr. Choi Young-sik adjusted his glasses as he watched the holographic displays light up like a deadly Christmas tree around the underground research facility. The Mariana Trench Research Station, officially listed as a deep-sea exploration base, was actually humanity's most advanced weapons development center. For 50 years, the world's brightest minds had worked in absolute secrecy, preparing for this exact moment. "Quantum disruptors are showing full power," Engineer Nam Hai-rin announced from her control station, her fingers flying across interfaces that seemed to bend space around them. "Molecular dissolution fields are charged to maximum capacity." The massive screens showed real-time footage of Valtharian dropships plummeting toward Earth's major cities. Each alien craft was the size of a city block, packed with genetically enhanced warriors who had conquered countless worlds. Their energy shields glowed like miniature suns, deflecting the pathetic missile attacks that conventional Earth militaries were desperately launching. "Look at them," whispered research assistant Park Dong-woo, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and disgust. "They're not even trying to avoid our attacks. Pure arrogance." Dr. Choi nodded grimly. The Valtharian Empire had grown so powerful over the millennia that they no longer bothered with caution. Their scouts had visited Earth decades ago, cataloging humanity as a primitive species barely capable of spaceflight. They had seen the wind farms, the communication towers, the weather stations, and dismissed them all as the crude attempts of a developing civilization. They had no idea they were looking at humanity's greatest deception. "Sir," the alien command. "Ship is broadcasting victory messages to their homeworld," reported communications specialist Lee Yoon-young. "They're already planning the slave markets and resource extraction operations." The central display showed the massive Valtharian flagship, a floating city of metal and death that stretched across 30 kilometers of space. Inside that vessel, Fleet Admiral Vextar was probably already composing his victory report, adding Earth to his long list of conquered worlds. "Bring up the global defense grid," Dr. Choi ordered calmly. Instantly, the screens transformed to show Earth as the Valtharians had never seen it. The planet bristled with hidden energy signatures that made their most advanced sensors look like children's toys. What they had mistaken for simple wind farms in the North Sea were actually massive quantum energy collectors, each one capable of powering entire star systems. The communication satellites orbiting Earth revealed themselves as weapons platforms that could crack moons in half. "Those poor aliens," muttered engineer Kim Tae-jun from his monitoring station. "They thought they were invading a backward planet. They just declared war on a civilization that mastered faster than light travel, when their great-grandfathers were still learning to walk upright." The first wave of Valtharian dropships was now seconds away from landing in downtown Seoul. Through the facility's advanced viewing systems, Dr. Choi could see the alien warriors inside their transport craft, their three eyes gleaming with anticipation of an easy slaughter. Their clawed hands gripped weapons that could slice through tank armor like paper. "Activate dissolution field array," Dr. Choi commanded. Engineer Nam's fingers danced across her controls. Quantum disruptors locked onto targets, molecular bonds destabilizing in 3, 2, 1. What happened next defied everything the Valtharians thought they knew about warfare. The first dropship, descending towards Seoul with its cargo of 500 elite warriors, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but completely unmade at the atomic level. One moment it was a massive metal beast screaming through the atmosphere. The next moment, there was nothing but empty air and confused radio silence. "Target eliminated," Nam reported with professional calm. "Moving to next wave." Across the globe, the scene repeated itself with terrifying efficiency. Dropships vanishing over Tokyo, London, and New York, as if they had never existed. The Valtharian warriors inside didn't even have time to scream before their molecular bonds dissolved into quantum foam. The second wave of alien craft, still plummeting toward Earth, suddenly found themselves trapped in localized gravity wells that appeared out of nowhere. The gravitational forces were so intense that 30-meter-long assault ships compressed into metal marbles the size of basketballs in less than 2 seconds. The elite Valtharian shock troopers, genetically enhanced to survive in the vacuum of space, were crushed into atomic paste. "Sir, we're receiving frantic communications from the alien flagship," Lee reported, her voice barely containing excitement. "Their language processors are struggling to translate, but it sounds like panic." Dr. Choi smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. In the span of 30 seconds, the Valtharian Empire had lost over 2,000 assault craft and 1 million of their finest warriors. The primitive humans they had come to conquer were systematically erasing their invasion force from existence. On the main screen, they could see the bridge of the alien flagship in chaos. Fleet Admiral Vextar, who had begun this day planning humanity's enslavement, was now staring at his tactical displays in absolute horror. His 3 golden eyes, which had gleamed with predatory confidence just minutes before, now held the wild terror of a predator who had suddenly realized he was actually the prey. The proud roar of conquest that had echoed across his flagship's bridge was now reduced to a whimpering whisper of disbelief. Captain Bei Su-jin stood calmly on the bridge of what appeared to be a rusted cargo freighter, drifting lazily through Earth's orbital space. The peaceful trader looked like it had seen better decades, with hull plates that seemed ready to fall off and engines that barely glowed. Any Valtharian sensor operator would have dismissed it as space junk not worth targeting. They had no idea they were looking at humanity's most advanced warship. "Captain, the aliens are finally realizing they're in trouble," reported Weapons Officer Young Min-ki, his fingers dancing across controls that looked like simple shipping manifests but actually controlled enough firepower to crack planets. "Their fleet is trying to regroup after losing all their ground forces." Through the disguised ship's advanced viewing systems, Bay watched the massive Valtharian fleet scramble in panic. 12,000 warships that had entered Earth's system, with absolute confidence, were now desperately trying to understand how their unstoppable invasion force had been wiped out in minutes. "Look at them," whispered Navigator Kim So-young, pointing at the tactical display. "The mighty conquerors of 43 worlds, running around like scared children." The Valtharian dreadnoughts were truly impressive specimens of military engineering. Each one stretched across kilometers of space, bristling with weapons that could reduce continents to molten slag. Their hulls were armored with materials that could withstand the heart of a star, and their shields had never been breached by any known weapon in the galaxy. Against humanity's hidden technology, they might as well have been made of paper. "Gravitational manipulators coming online," Bay announced with the same tone she might use to order coffee, targeting the lead battle group. Around Earth's orbital space, installations that had been masquerading as communication satellites and weather monitoring stations began to reveal their true purpose. The gravitational manipulation array was humanity's proudest achievement, a network of devices that could bend space-time itself into whatever shape they desired. The first Valtharian battle group, consisting of 6 massive dreadnoughts and their escort fleet, suddenly found themselves caught in artificial gravity fields that exceeded the pull of neutron stars. The alien ships, each weighing millions of tons, began to compress like tin cans being crushed by an invisible giant's fist. "Direct hit on the enemy flagship, Conquest of Stars," reported Jung, watching his instruments with professional satisfaction. "Hull integrity failing. The ship is compressing at a rate of 50 meters per second." The Valtharian crew aboard the doomed vessel had seconds to realize what was happening before their 30-kilometer-long dreadnought was crushed into a metal sphere the size of a basketball. The screams that echoed across their communication channels were cut short as physics reduced the proudest achievement of their empire to compressed scrap metal. Moving to the next target group, Bay continued calmly. Time dilation field generators prepare for activation. On Luna, Lieutenant Oh Min Ho worked at a station that officially didn't exist. The temporal distortion array was humanity's most classified project, a weapon that could manipulate time itself within localized areas. The facility was hidden beneath a fake mining operation that had been running for 30 years just to maintain the cover story. Time dilation fields charging, O announced across the secure channel, targeting the enemy command ship. The Valtharian flagship Eternal Conquest was a floating palace of death, a massive vessel that served as both military command center and symbol of imperial power. Emperor Krathivor himself commanded from its bridge, his presence alone enough to make entire star systems surrender without a fight. The temporal manipulation field hit the flagship like an invisible wave, and suddenly the massive vessel found itself trapped in a bubble where time moved at different rates throughout the ship. The bridge crew watched in horror as their emperor aged decades in seconds, while other sections of the ship seemed frozen in time. "Sir, we're getting readings from inside their command ship," reported Communications Officer Park Sung-ho, his voice filled with amazement. "The alien emperor is experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. He's watching the destruction of his fleet, from past, present, and future perspectives all at once." Through the quantum observation system, they could see Emperor Krathivor's face contorting in absolute terror. The reptilian ruler who had conquered dozens of worlds was now trapped in a nightmare where he experienced his defeat from every possible angle. His three eyes rolled wildly as his consciousness was scattered across multiple time streams. The remaining Valtharian fleet, seeing their emperor's flagship trapped in the impossible temporal distortion, began to panic completely. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for millennia started breaking ranks, their crews overwhelmed by the realization that they were facing an enemy beyond their comprehension. "Gravitational shear wave incoming," announced Jung from his weapons station, targeting the enemy reserve fleet. The second wave of gravitational manipulation caught an entire battle group of Valtharian ships as they tried to retreat. The artificial gravity fields didn't just crush the vessels, they twisted them into impossible shapes, turning proud warships into twisted metal sculptures that defied physics. Crews who had been preparing for an easy conquest found themselves experiencing forces that shouldn't exist in normal space. "Total enemy fleet destruction at 97%, reported Jung, his voice maintaining professional calm despite the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Remaining vessels are attempting to flee the system." Bay looked at the tactical display, where the dots representing 12,000 Valtharian warships had been reduced to scattered debris and a handful of fleeing escape pods. The mighty empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 millennia had been reduced to floating wreckage in exactly 6 minutes and 37 seconds. "Send a message to the survivors," she ordered quietly. "Tell them to carry word back to whatever's left of their empire. The age of conquest is over." Admiral Lim Jae-young stood in the center of the Global Defense Council's primary command center, a facility that existed 10 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps. Around her, massive holographic displays showed the aftermath of humanity's first open display of military power. Debris fields that had once been the mighty Valtharian armada drifted silently through space, while tiny escape pods fled toward the edge of the solar system like terrified insects. "Admiral, we're receiving incoming transmissions from across the galaxy," reported Communications Director Ko Yun-soo, her headset crackling with dozens of alien languages. "Every major civilization is trying to contact us. The Zelthak Federation, the Crystalline Collective, even the machine worlds of the Sigma sector." Lim nodded calmly as she reviewed the quantum communication array that stretched across multiple dimensions. For centuries, humanity had been quietly listening to galactic chatter, learning languages, studying cultures, and watching empires rise and fall. They had observed the Valtharian Empire's brutal conquest of 43 worlds, the enslavement of countless species, and the systematic destruction of any civilization that dared to resist. "Patch me through to all galactic frequencies," Lim ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 5 billion years of human evolution. It's time the galaxy learned who's really been watching. The quantum transmitters hummed to life, sending humanity's first official message across thousands of light years in seconds. Advanced civilizations throughout the galaxy suddenly found their communication systems overwhelmed by a signal more powerful than anything they had ever encountered. "To all civilizations receiving this transmission," Lim began, her words being simultaneously translated into over 3,000 known galactic languages. "This is Admiral Lim J. Young of the Terran Defense Force. Earth hereby announces its presence as a galactic power." On the screens around her, she could see real-time reactions from across the galaxy. The insectoid leaders of the hive worlds were frantically trying to trace the signal's origin. The energy beings of the Aurora Nebula were pulsing with colors. That indicated extreme surprise. The ancient turtle-like contemplators, who had remained neutral for 10,000 years, were emerging from their meditation chambers for the first time in centuries. "We have observed your wars, your conquests, your suffering in silence for centuries," Lim continued, her eyes fixed on the camera that would carry her image to billions of alien beings. "We watched as the Valtharian Empire crushed the peaceful Harmony worlds. We witnessed the genocide of the Crystal Singers of Vega Prime. We recorded every act of cruelty, every moment of injustice." Behind her, the tactical displays showed the few surviving Valtharian escape pods limping toward their home system. The proud warriors who had entered Earth's system, expecting an easy conquest, were now broken refugees, their ships damaged and their crews traumatized by witnessing power beyond their comprehension. "The age of empire through force is over," Lim declared, her voice carrying across space to reach every listening post, every space station, every world where sentient beings gathered. "Today, the Valtharian Empire learned what happens when predators mistake a guardian for prey." General Ankibum stepped forward, activating additional displays that showed humanity's true capabilities. Hidden installations across Earth's solar system revealed themselves, massive structures that had been disguised as asteroids, space debris, and natural phenomena. The galaxy's most advanced sensors had been looking right at humanity's greatest weapons without ever realizing what they were seeing. "Look at their reactions," whispered Intelligence Officer Yu Minjung, monitoring the flood of alien communications. "The Kronar War Council is calling an emergency session. The Ethereal Collective is requesting immediate diplomatic contact. Even the Silent Watchers are breaking their 1,000-year communication silence." On distant worlds, alien leaders were scrambling to understand this new reality. The Valtharian Empire had been the galaxy's dominant military power for 3 millennia. Their technology was legendary. Their warriors were genetically enhanced killing machines, and their ships were considered unstoppable. The fact that humanity had reduced their greatest fleet to scrap metal in less than 10 minutes was rewriting everything the galaxy thought it knew about power. "We offer peace to those who choose it," Lim continued, her message reaching species that had never heard of Earth just hours before. "Protection to those who need it, and swift justice to those who would prey upon the innocent. We have no interest in conquest or empire. We seek only to ensure that what happened to the Valtharians today never needs to happen again." The communication arrays lit up with responses from across the galaxy. The slave worlds that had suffered under Valtharian rule were broadcasting messages of gratitude. The neutral trading worlds were requesting immediate diplomatic relations. Even some of the galaxy's more aggressive species were sending careful messages of respect and cautious friendship. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Valtharian homeworld," reported Ko, her voice tight with tension. "It's from their High Council. They're requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations and offering complete surrender terms." Lim allowed herself a small smile. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was now begging for mercy from the species they had dismissed as primitive mammals just hours earlier. "This is humanity's only warning to those who would choose the path of conquest," she concluded, her words echoing across space to reach every corner of the galaxy. We have been patient guardians, but our patience is not infinite. Consider this. Demonstration a lesson in the consequences of threatening the innocent. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the responses began flooding in. Requests for alliance, offers of trade, pleas for protection. From smaller worlds that had lived in fear for generations, the balance of galactic power had shifted in 10 minutes, and every species in the known universe was scrambling to understand their new reality. Humanity had revealed itself not as conquerors, but as guardians who preferred peace, but were absolutely terrifying when forced to act. The cosmos now had protectors who had been watching all along, and the age of unchecked aggression was finally over. The end.